All right, and we are live with a podcast for all seasons. This is episode 12. Today we are going to be doing a comic book roundup for most recent movie news and a few other little things thrown in if we can make the time. My co-host, Mr. Eric Joseph.
I think I'll just take it from here, Josh, while you get your dog controlled. Yeah, apparently Josh's dog has decided to be an uninvited guest at the top of our episode. Anyway, this is Eric Joseph of DarkKnightNews.com, comicbookmovie.com, and our blog site Multiverse Entertainment. Before we get to what is probably going to be a rather meaty episode when it comes to topics we're going to discuss, let me just talk about the state of the show right now. No, we're not going away, but you may have noticed there's been multi-week gaps in between our last episodes. We never intended for this show to be a weekly episode, but in the beginning it very much was. We had a new episode pretty much every week for quite a while, but we don't want to do frivolous or superfluous episodes or do it for the sake of doing it. We just want to report and analyze relevant topics in comic books, comic book movies, whatever media they may be, and sometimes we do our themed episodes, as you know. But especially over the past few weeks, we've also had, family obligations and other stuff we had to attend to, but we're finally able to get another episode in the can here, as it were. And just another thing, that this episode probably won't be linked on our blog page, Multiverse Entertainment. Apparently I'm getting tongue-tied here. I've been having problems with my PC lately, and I'm going to be upgrading within the next few weeks, so it's just going to be easier to share the YouTube video on our Facebook page, which hopefully facebook.com/apodcastforallseasons. And besides, we get more casual listeners just from around YouTube or Facebook anyway, so it doesn't totally hurt. But maybe we'll put the links in the future on our not Facebook page. There it is again, tongue-tied. Our blog page, which you can go check out. I put the latest Guardians of the Galaxy trailer up there at multiverseentertainment.wordpress.com. And our first thing we're going to talk about for a little bit was last weekend we attended Motor City Comic Con, so I will turn it over to my co-host Josh Mundy. How did you enjoy Comic Con this year?
Well, I absolutely loved it. It was a really big year in the Motor City for their official big comic book show. It's one of those things where, they have been getting bigger as the years go by. They've been getting bigger year by year and bigger guests. When I say bigger, I mean it started out with, honestly, maybe a few thousand people. At the most. I don't know the exact numbers, but it wasn't an extraordinarily large show, and it's just been ballooning larger and larger in the last 3 years. So, last year they had a couple big media guests. One of the largest specifically was Stan Lee. Walter Koenig was there. I believe there was Norman Reedus from The Walking Dead, and so they've been bringing bigger and bigger guests on. Well, this year they had William Shatner, which in my opinion is one of the just biggest sci-fi icons of all time. I know he's up in years, but him and Leonard Nimoy are pretty much at the top of the sci-fi icon list, and now Takei's gotten some really big popularity because of his Facebook, and I think he's got a website as well. We also had John Barrowman there. From Doctor Who, also as well as Torchwood, and now Arrow, and finally, I think one of the third biggest guests was well, we had Jason Momoa from Game of Thrones, and also Conan, and then Carl Urban from the most recent Star Trek movies, as well as Almost Human. So I got to meet every single one of those people I just mentioned. I very briefly kind of just said hello to John Barrowman. His line was exceptionally long, but Katie Cassidy's line was right next to his, so I just kind of got to say, hey, John, I'm a fan, and whatnot. Got some pretty good pictures of him. But it was a big year for the Comic Con. Some awesome comic artists as well. I'll let Eric kind of talk about those. What did you think, man? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I had a great time this year. It was a lot less congested. We still had a lot of people like last year, but they opened up the full convention floor. I only got to go for one day this year. Hopefully, I'll be able to go for all three in a future year. Next week, should say next year's Motor City Comic Con will be May 15th through 17th, 2015. They've already locked in the dates for it. Suburban Collection Showplace, Novi, Michigan. But as you were talking how it's grown, this is my third year going to Motor City Comic Con, and I've seen the promos around comic shops before, and I've always looked at it, and they said, there weren't as many big guests in years before, and 3 years ago I decided it was about time for me to go to cons, and I really had a good time. But when we went to the 2012 show, the biggest comic book guests I think that were there that year, I believe, were just Ethan Van Sciver and Steve Scott, and then they had a few good actors there. Last year was just this huge boom in popularity. They were getting bigger names from the comics industry and film industry to show up. They're also getting more wrestling legends as well. And then this year it just seemed to get even better. And I just hope that in the future we continue to get more big name actors and big name comic creators to come to this thing. And I don't know if there's some kind of attendance quota to where Marvel and DC start to have an actual presence and we can start having panels and announcements from them. That's what I want to see one day personally. Let's actually have them acknowledge Detroit, because the closest they come here, I believe, is Chicago and Toronto. But I got to meet some cool comic creators. I got an ass load of comic books signed as Josh knew. I think I was like 26 or something like that. But I got to meet some pretty cool guys. Bill Sinkiewicz, met Chris Claremont. It was good to meet a legend, someone who wrote, I believe, what was it, 19 years of X-Men stories, and now he's currently on Nightcrawler, so he's working in that universe again. Charles Soule, got to meet him again. He's a pretty cool guy. His indie title on Oni Press, Letter 44, just got picked up by Sci-Fi, so it's going to be cool to see that as a TV show. The concept sounds pretty cool. Look it up online, Letter 44. I have not read it month to month. I'm going to get the trade and then, of course, watch the TV show. But I've interviewed him previously on comicbookmovie.com, and will be interviewing him again soon for darkknightnews.com. As for celebrities, I only met 4 of them this year. I was just all over the place on the show floor. Let's see, Ernie Hudson, I don't think you mentioned him, but you got your picture taken with him. He was a pretty cool guy. I got to meet him for just a few moments because I've been a Ghostbusters fan since I was a toddler. He also had the Ecto-1A with him from Ghostbusters 2. John Barrowman was a pretty cool guy. Didn't get to talk to him for too long because he had one of the longest lines there. Let's see, Robert Knapper, glad to finally meet since Prison Break. I think he's such a great character actor, and I complimented him on how he made such a vile character so beloved in T-Bag. And I also said, a lot of people give him the credits to where, say, he played Clock King on this past season of Arrow, and that's, you could probably call him a B tier villain. But when Robert Knepper was announced, a lot of people thought it was instant credibility and weight to that role, and he seemed to like the compliments I gave him. We had a few laughs too. Just a really cool guy. And I really liked Katie Cassidy too. She was really nice. Got to talk to her. She also let me feel her bicep. That kind of caught me by surprise. Didn't think that was going to happen. I didn't ask her either. She was just, she got a ton of Black Canary questions that day and whatnot, and I guess I should be tight-lipped about it, but you can probably guess where Arrow's going to go in a few directions next season. That's no confirmation or denial. I technically know nothing about where the show's going in season 3, but we have our ideas. Also got to hang out with J.L. Anderson for most of the day, who some of you may remember guested on our Resident Evil and Silent Hill episodes, so that was pretty cool. Anything else you want to say about the con before we move on to Spider-Man, Josh?
Just that, yeah. I mean, I also met Robert Knepper. I met Katie Cassidy. I will say, as far as celebrities that I have met, I've met several. Me and Eric really liked actor from Battlestar Galactica and Being Human. The actor's name is escaping me for some strange reason because I'm having a complete blank in my mind. Geez, oh Pete, I can't even believe I'm blanking on his name because I'm a
Whitwer?
yeah, Sam Witwer. Sam Witwer. We met him a few years back, and he was a really nice guy. He was like extremely down to earth and whatnot, and that's a rare thing to see amongst actors. Like, we were kind of BSing with him for about maybe 5 minutes, and he legitimately just seemed like another guy we were talking to at the con. He was excited to see other celebrities just like we were, and some of the even comic guests and stuff like that. So that was really cool then. But this year, I make comparisons to people that I've met before, as far as people who are really nice, and although my interaction with William Shatner was very minimal, he had a very long line, as did Barrowman. He seemed like he was had some very genuine gratitude towards the fans, which is really cool, because I've seen big celebrities kind of be flippant, for lack of a better word. Not necessarily overtly rude, although I've seen a few of them be that way as well, and Eric and me could probably name a few, but we don't want to bash anybody. But we've definitely met a few people who are a little less, friendly than others. And then we've met people who are extremely friendly, and it's almost to a point that it's shocking. I mean, I know they're normal people, but you hear bad things about celebrities being, vainglorious and all that. And Ernie Hudson and William Shatner were two of the most genuinely kind celebrities that I've met. Even though my interaction with William Shatner was very minimal, he was very, very generously kind. He exuded it, for lack of a better word. And Ernie Hudson was he was exactly what I would expect, a really awesome person to be like when you meet them in person. He was like, hey man, thanks for coming out, and shaking hands, and I mean, he was like literally holding and kissing babies. I mean, Barrowman was the same way. He seemed like he was very, very gracious with his fans and stuff like that. So that's awesome. I mean, my kudos go out to the people who've organized a Motor City Comic Con, and to the actors and comic guests that we mentioned. Everyone was really great. I didn't really have any bad experiences. But how about we move on to the majority of what we're going to be talking about this episode in upcoming, most recent comic book movie news, as well as review in Amazing Spider-Man 2. So why don't you start off Amazing Spider-Man 2, Eric, and then we'll move into some of the other stuff.
All right. Yeah, we really need to talk Spider-Man 2 because, well, I should say The Amazing Spider-Man 2, because we've been saying for weeks we're going to do a podcast reviewing it, and we at least want to take a decent amount of this episode to talk about it. It's been 3 weeks since I've seen it, and seeing a movie that I've talking about a movie I've seen only one time. I might not get as detailed as I want to, especially since I'm still on a high from seeing X-Men Days of Future Past last night, which was just spectacular, and hopefully we'll talk about that in our next episode. So hopefully Josh gets to see soon. But The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Okay, it's my second favorite of the mainstream Spider-Man movies. I don't like the same. I will stick by my guns to this day, saying the Sam Raimi trilogy was like Joel Schumacher's Batman films without neon. I don't know how people can defend those films. The first one is just beyond campy. It's like watching a Power Rangers episode. I just can't take it seriously. Spider-Man 2 was just boring. I can't get into it. Then Spider-Man 3 was just a complete mess, but at least I can laugh at things in it. So maybe if I would watch any of the Raimi movies, it's Spider-Man 3, and I'm probably like the only person who will say that, but I guess that's a guilty pleasure film, even though, as I said, it's a mess. The Amazing Spider-Man, though it did tread some familiar ground, I still see the movie than the first Raimi film from 2002. It was also the first Spider-Man film I could take seriously. I prefer straight-faced comic book films, as listeners of this show know. The Amazing Spider-Man 2, however, had the potential to be something greater, but it wasn't. But it was still an okay film at the end of the day. The first half of the film, I didn't think I was going to enjoy it so much. Most of the stuff with Electro was just downright silly. I thought some of the plot threads weren't going to connect, even though they did toward the end. As we know, the Rhino character, by the way, we're talking spoilers today, obviously. It's a movie that's been out 3 weeks. We're going to talk about whatever subject matter we want in it. The Rhino, completely superfluous. He did not need to be in that movie other than to set up Sinister Six. Though you did see Spider-Man, it's one of the things that got him back in action at the end after Gwen's death, which we pretty much all knew was going to happen. Anyone familiar with the comic book mythology, once the set photos got out of Gwen, wearing her attire that she wore in the comics when she died, people just made the connection it was going to happen in the movie. I thought the scenes between Gwen and Spider-Man were pretty good. Granted, it was a little superhero movie Twilight, but they handled it very well, especially with how much the death impacted him at the end. You really got the picture. This wasn't just any girlfriend for him. It really was his first love. He could not pick himself up to do anything for a 5-month period. But who really stole the show was Dane DeHaan as Harry Osborn. Granted, you didn't see him as the Goblin until the end, but I think you could have even just taken Electro out of the movie and had a movie about Peter and Harry, and it probably would have been better, and it been just more of a strong experience. But we know they want to set up Sinister Six. I kind of think Norman Osborn was underused. Granted, they did take out a scene that was supposed to be mid-credits, where the gentleman, you can find pictures of this online. The gentleman, played by Michael Massey, is walking through the basement lab at Oscorp, where they have the Vulture wings and Doc Ock arms, and Norman Osborn's frozen head was in there. I just thought that, okay, having Harry as the Goblin is something to set this trilogy apart from the Raimi ones, but Norman Osborn is just such an important character in the Marvel Universe that I think they do have to put him in some significant role in a future movie. But getting back to the Sinister Six thing, I at times felt like this movie was not able to be its own film or part of Mark Webb's trilogy, as it were. A lot of it just felt like a commercial for the Sinister Six, and I'm also, since we've got a bit to talk about, before I hand it over to your review of the movie, Josh, I'm going to also touch on the future of the franchise as well. And by the way, my score on a scale of 1 to 10 for The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I would give it a 7 out of 10. So that's a pretty decent rating. It seems I also probably enjoyed the film more than a lot of people did. I don't think it was as abysmal as some people are saying it was. Had its problems, but still a good film and something I'll probably. As for the Sinister Six thing, it's going to get here. The Amazing Spider-Man 3 is set to arrive June of 2016. That's a given. We know they've dated The Amazing Spider-Man 4 for May of 2018, but now they've said that might possibly be another movie because they want to do the Venom and Sinister Six spin-offs before The Amazing Spider-Man 4 gets here. Venom, I believe, could carry his own movie as an anti-hero film. I might have touched on that point when we discussed the Sony MCU way back in episode 2 of this show. Sinister Six is not the direction of what I wanted. I believe I once said this should work as a caper film, essentially Ocean's 11 with superpowers, but they're just going to give us a straight-up Sinister Six film. Spider-Man's not fighting the Sinister Six. They're saying it's going to be a redemption story, and I'm someone who says supervillains have taken the lives of so many innocents. They're not redeemable. I'm sorry. But when it comes to this, I'll reiterate a point from an episode before. Every studio has an end game or a big team-up that they can lead to. Disney with their Marvel films has the Avengers. Warner Brothers with their DC films has Justice League, which we're going to touch on later in the episode when we talk DC. Fox is a bit sketchy about the subject. Of course, it matters if Fantastic Four's reboot does well, but Fox can build to an X-Men Fantastic Four crossover, which I certainly would hope to see one day. Sony, I think, is doing Sinister Six as a half-baked Avengers. This is the closest they can do to it. And let's face it, Sinister Six is not, probably won't make as much as even just a plain Spider-Man movie. I don't know what kind of appeal this is going to have to the mainstream audience. I certainly think comic book fans would like to see it, but the average moviegoer, kids and families especially love going to Spider-Man movies. They're going to want to see Spider-Man. Venom would probably attract the older crowd, maybe some of the younger crowd too, but I don't see Sinister Six being as much of a sell, and that's pretty much going to do it for my rather succinct review of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So I'll turn it over to you, Josh. Give us your review of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Please grade it on a scale of 1 to 10 when you're done, and then let us know what you think about the future of Sony's Marvel Universe.
Well, I enjoyed the film maybe a little more than you. I mean, there was definitely a couple things that rubbed me the wrong way. I thought that the Electro villain was at first interesting and then just quickly devolved into this, absurd, really comic-y, and I mean comic like slapstick comic, and not in a good way. I mean, there are your comic characters that you expect to be humorous, Spider-Man being one of them, but not Electro, and it's one of those situations where it really weakened the film a lot, and it absolutely could have worked without him as such a primary character. It did not have to be Amazing Spider-Man 2, The Rise of Electro. It could have been The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and just left it at that. Rise of Electro definitely indicated that we were going to get a very important villain, and he just seemed like he was very throwaway at the end, potentially even died at the end, even though I doubt, because we'll probably see him in Sinister Six. However, I enjoyed the film. I really like Andrew Garfield as an actor. I think that he is. I think he's got some good dynamic range, and I think that he is going to have a pretty decent career ahead of him. I loved him in The Social Network. I liked him in the first Spider-Man, and I think that Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy was absolutely fantastic. They have fantastic chemistry because, well, they're an actual real life couple, which some people aren't even aware of. Um, and their relationship, although Eric said it did kind of feel a little bit like, Twilight meets Spider-Man. I think that in order to establish the importance of a love interest that then dies, and to feel the true impact of that, you have to establish that this was a real working relationship, that these two people were really in love. And they very much touch on the whole, how does someone with all of Spider-Man's problems and then, Peter Parker's life have a working relationship, period? It's hard enough for real people who have, 9 to 5 jobs to have successful relationships from time to time. And so how does Spider-Man have a successful relationship with the extremely busy Emma Stone uh, slash Gwen Stacy? And they made it a very realistic, organic relationship. I thought that it was very well done, and when she died, we really felt his loss, and I think that they nailed that part. When they made Electro extremely overpowered, I thought that it was going to be a kind of, Deus Ex Machina. Like, how are we going to defeat a villain who became as powerful as Electro? Because it was like Dr. Manhattan style. He starts, disappearing and reappearing in the split second. It was kind of like, how is Spider-Man going to even defeat this villain? Add to it the character of the Green Goblin. Add to it Rhino, which we didn't know how much of a part he was going to play. We figured it was going to be extremely minor, but it ended up, he was completely superfluous, as Eric said. But Dean DeHaan stole the show as the Green Goblin, and he absolutely should have had a larger role in the film. The emphasis should have been more on him than on Electro. They absolutely could have had both of them in the film, but they definitely should have lowered the interest on him. I would give the film an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. It was very, very funny in parts. Spider-Man was being Spider-Man, telling very funny jokes, being very Spider-Man. When he met the character of Max Dillon's Electro, he's like, hey Max, you're my eyes on, you got my eyes on the street, and I'll remember you, buddy. Hey, here, you need these blueprints you dropped. Let me pick them up for you. It was very humorous. You got the idea that this is a hero of the people, that this is someone that people could love, and they did in the film. And obviously there's a long storied history in Spider-Man of him being a hated character because J. Jonah Jameson really wants everyone to think he's a bad guy. There's a little bit of that touched on in the film. It's like, is he good for the city? And then obviously the film answers it at the end with Spider-Man being gone after the death of Gwen Stacy's character for a period of time. He is missed by the city for his ability to fight crime, and the city misses him as a presence. And it was an enjoyable film. As far as the future of the series, way too much emphasis on Sinister Six, way too much emphasis on going forward with trying to push that. I don't think it was significant as some people said it was, but they definitely were touching on it strongly enough that it was definitely significant enough that but it was definitely significant enough that they I don't know, they could have spent that time in the film doing more important things. But that's pretty much all I have to say about Amazing Spider-Man 2. I liked the film quite a bit. It's been a bit since I've seen it. I definitely would view it again. Am I going to purchase the film immediately? I don't know. I know that when we do our reviews over at Humber Bronto Show, it's kind of like, hey, is this worth a purchase? I definitely think it's worth a purchase. Maybe not same day, but prices drops down to $20. I'll pick it up on Blu-ray. Absolutely, it's a good film. what do you think about what do you think we should go next to? I know we were going to talk about Batfleck and a couple other things. Where do you want to go to next, Eric?
Yeah, I think that's what we'll touch on now. But before we talk Batfleck, I just want to say Dane DeHaan's haircut in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, 10 out of 10. That was a haircut. Anyway, now moving on to Ben Affleck and Batman versus Superman. Last week, we finally had a monochromatic reveal of Ben Affleck in the bat suit next to the Batmobile. Some people were able to scale down the shadow and enhance it. We got a real crisp look at the suit, which is obviously black and gray, which Kevin Smith confirmed because he's seen another photo of the suit. I don't know how anyone could complain about this suit or Batmobile. It is just straight out of a comic book. The suit is obviously it's an amalgam of the New 52 along with Frank Miller's Hunt the Dark Knight suit from The Dark Knight Returns. It just you can tell it's still armor plated under it, a little padding, but that's all. Ben Affleck's really bulked up for this role, and you can tell it's a little more fabric than before, but this is the best Batman costume we've seen in a live action movie. I really don't know how anyone can complain about it. This is the costume I've always wanted to see. I do hope eventually that we will get to see blue and gray, because some people even photoshopped it, and we can see that a blue and gray suit does look pretty badass in live action. And then, of course, this week you can also check out. I've done articles about both of these, but you've probably seen them. But if you want to check out Dark Knight News, I've got them over in featured posts there. But of course, this week we've got the title of the film finally, and Roe versus Wade: Dawn of Justice. Wait, excuse me, Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice. The V is not the VS; it's rather a V, like you would see in a legal battle. But I saw someone point out online in an editorial, I believe Bill Jet Ramey from Batman on Film, he said that it so much when you're visually looking at the logo of the film and the title, it makes the Batman and Superman pop more at you, and I have to agree with that observation. But as for the title of the film, really, I'm not totally hot on verses in the title because it makes them sound at odds more than they are. I would rather have the title Batman and Superman, but they'll probably fight early on in the film before teaming up and, you know, building toward Justice League. After all, the subtitle's Dawn of Justice, much like Captain America: The First Avenger gave way to the Avengers. I do like the subtitle though. But of course, Batman hijacked Superman's movie. But of course, Warner Brothers, they're going to give Batman top billing because he's the golden boy, the moneymaker over there. So you can't totally fault them for that decision. But yeah, May 2016, I can't wait. This movie has me so excited, and hopefully we see the reveal of Wonder Woman pretty soon, as well as Henry Cavill, though his costume is said to only have undergone minor tweaks, so it won't be too dissimilar to what we saw in Man of Steel. Jesse Eisenberg, I don't believe he shows up for filming until June, a bit before we get to see Lex Luthor, but they started doing some minor filming last week in Birmingham, Michigan, and you may have seen photos from the set with Gal Gadot, not in Wonder Woman attire, obviously, but they filmed her. She was in a blue dress, so she's just Diana Prince. You can dig through recent articles on Dark Knight News. We have at least 2 articles up over there. but principal photography has officially gotten underway this week. So I believe it is supposed to be a 10-month shoot, but yeah, not too much to talk about on that front, but just exciting stuff. We finally know what Batman looks like. We finally know what the movie's called. Your thoughts, Josh?
Where to begin? First things first. Yeah, Batfleck. I love seeing people absolutely try to make the excuse of, oh, this suit's horrible. We're getting, miserable, sad Batman, and it looks like garbage, or, I hate this suit. And what makes me laugh so hard about the haters is that, we had people, talk bad about the Bale suit and saying that, oh, it's too much like armor, it looks nothing like comic books. Some people love the suit from the Dark Knight. Some people hated the suit from Batman Begins. Some people love the suit from Batman Begins. If anything, the Batfleck reveal has proved to me it's that people are going to hate the shit out of anything that they do about something that they love. Comic book fans specifically are extremely, passionate, volatile people at times, and it's the proof that, it reminds me of, I guess, X-Men, when people said, why aren't we getting a yellow Wolverine suit? And it's like, oh, do you really want to see Wolverine in yellow spandex? They've made the joke about it in other X-Men films. They changed it up for a realistic movie appearance, and we got the actual, yellow suit kind of hinted at in not Days of Future Past, but in actual X-Men: The First Class. But my point is that they have literally given us a suit that is directly out of the comic books. And when I mean directly out of the comic books, it is from, book 5 or 6, I think Kevin Smith said, of the Dark Knight Returns. Granted, it is not one of my preferred favorite comics, but it is. Yeah, it was exactly like the comic book. The only thing that has been moderately changed is the symbol. But before we go on, the title, I thought that the title was extremely tepid to me. I think it's just lukewarm. I don't like the verses. I think that the fact that they have Batman versus Superman, the fact that Batman is getting first person, definitely is driving me crazy, just like my dog is driving me crazy. But I think that, they gave it first billing because of what you said. Warner Brothers sees Batman as the golden boy. He absolutely is the biggest money maker, or at least he has been in the last 10 years. Superman's made some decent money for them, but they've also spent a lot of money to get there, and they've spent a lot of time to get there. As far as the Dawn of Justice, it sounds really 1950s-ish. It's like Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice, and I guess I don't mind, a little bit of, we expected it was going to be maybe Superman or Man of Steel : Batman versus Superman, or some variation or something like that. I wish it was more Batman / Superman or Superman / Batman than versus. It's a very strange title. When's the last time we ever saw any title that had anyone versus anyone? Hulk versus was an animated film, but I'm not hot on the title, but I can't deny my excitement because Ben Affleck is just, the guy is ripped to shit. He is not only absolutely as muscular as is necessary for Batman to be at his best. The costume is straight out of the comic books. The Batmobile looks like the most amazing amalgamation of the old school, 40s streamlined look that Burton's Batmobile was going for, and the Bat Tank from, the Tumbler from the Dark Knight films. So if anyone's complaining about either of those things, they're just looking for something to complain about. And that is where I will stop my complaints. But as far as
I guess I'll pick it up here.
Yeah, as far as moving forward, I mean, we can go towards what's going to happen, but we've touched on that so many times. I don't think we need to beat that dead horse. You want to move on to some of the Marvel developments?
I just had 2 points I want to make before we move on to Marvel. Yeah, we talked quite a bit for those listening on YouTube or elsewhere. Just look up our last episode. We kind of shared where we would like the DC films to go and what we'd like to see featured. Just look up our episode 11 Justice League movie if you want to hear what our expanded thoughts on this were. But yeah, just calling it Batman versus Superman, what I can say is good about the title is that it tells the man on the street who's in the movie, and it's definitely going to put asses in seats. Lots of people are still complaining that it's not called World's Finest. And as we constantly say on this show, comic book readers count for only a fraction of the people in theaters. Ask someone on the street what World's Finest is, and they're not going to know that it has anything to do with Batman and Superman. It's it works fine as a title for with a three-part crossover between Batman and Superman on the animated series. It's fine for a comic book, but as a mainstream live-action film, I'm sorry, World's Finest doesn't cut it. But anyway, moving on to some recent Marvel Studios developments this week, both of which were in the past 24 hours. Well, maybe 26. Edgar J. Wright is no longer attached to the Ant-Man movie, a project he has been attached to since 2006. And he's tried to get this movie made forever. They finally got it off the ground. They set a date. They've cast it. You'd think they're ready to go. And he and Disney made a joint press release that was just a paragraph yesterday saying creative differences. He's off the project. They'll announce a new director soon. The July 17th, 2015 release date still stands. Latino review, El Mayimbe, I don't care what people say about him. I think he's a well-connected guy, and if I trust the word of anyone at Latino review, it's him. He says he has it on good authority, and this just sounds like common sense because it's what I assumed when I heard the news, is that in short, it had grown into a movie that no longer resembled Edgar J. Wright's vision for Ant-Man. He alleges that the studio gave him some notes to do a script revision, and it had the usual stuff. You've got to have the references here, connect to the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe, among other things. He wrote a revision of the script to include that. Then I think they passed it off to some other screenwriters. And when you got the draft back, it resembled nothing of what his vision of Ant-Man was. So he had a meeting with Marvel Studios and Disney and said he was walking. Of course, this is not confirmed, but I think it sounds entirely realistic. And then today we got the news that Drew Goddard, who is the showrunner for the upcoming Daredevil Netflix series, which is also going to be the first show for Marvel's big Netflix initiative, ultimately leading to a Defenders crossover. He is now off the show. I don't know what the reasoning is. I didn't get the chance to totally read in detail on it, but I'm guessing it's still a bit vague, but we can tell you that he's still said to be on as consultant, and Stephen S. DeKnight has come in to take his place as showrunner. And you may remember Stephen S. DeKnight's name. He was a producer on Smallville for a few years, as well as writer, and I believe was a Spartacus showrunner. Josh is more knowledgeable about Spartacus, so he can probably tell you a little about that. But I think that he is a pretty solid person to fill the shoes for Drew Goddard, because Daredevil's one of my favorite Marvel characters, and him getting a live action return, even just as a series. But the series is nothing to shake your finger at, because a 13 episode Daredevil series can bring in more characters and give you more character development than a movie can. That's one advantage I think TV shows have over films. But I'm sure Marvel will put a substantial budget into this, and of any Netflix show, I'm pleased that Daredevil's coming first, because it's the one I want to see most. But I'll turn it over to you. What's your 2 cents on this whole Edgar J. Wright and Drew Goddard? Don't want to say debacle, but we'll say goings on.
Well, I will say the Edgar Wright thing, I'm a big fan of him as a director. I don't know how extremely involved he is in all of the screenwriting process for some of the movies that he's done, but he definitely has a certain tone. Anyone who's seen his films with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and World's End, knows that guy's got a certain tone. We know that he's had a successful transition into comic book movies with Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I mean, granted, that movie was very significantly toned towards that comic book, but he took something that was a very particular style in the manga, and kind of, I don't want to say like hipster type of movement that particular comic book touches towards the tween audience, but he definitely he took that shit and he owned it. I mean, and I do think that that's an enjoyable film. I don't think it's one of the best comic book films ever made or anything, but as far as a funny, quirky film that is a comic book movie, he absolutely knocked it out of the park. He did as good of a job on that movie as could have been done, in my opinion. I think that it's a really crazy decision. I'm shocked. I'm very unhappy about it, because I'll be honest, I was in no way enticed when I heard Ant-Man was going to be a film. I was like, what? Why? Who gives a shit? I mean, nobody, and I mean almost nobody, is a gigantic Ant-Man fan. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you have people who are like, yeah, I'm a Moon Knight fan. I really like, I like Black Panther. I don't know, I'm a Fist fan. I don't know, Luke Cage. Name a character who's existed in the last 50 years from Marvel's gigantic foray of characters, and the last person who's on the list of big fan characters is Ant-Man. I mean, I know he becomes part of the Avengers, and they're eventually gonna lead towards that or something, but I had no idea why they were deciding to make what I think is some unusual decisions, Guardians of the Galaxy and Ant-Man. But when Edgar Wright was signed on for it, I said, okay, I might actually want to see this film because I like Edgar Wright. But that being said, I think it's a really crazy decision. I hope that the film is still good. Who knows who's going to direct now and what it's going to become. But as far as the Daredevil decision, yeah, Stephen S. the Knight's fantastic. He's done some really awesome work. I mean, I don't know how far they're going to be able to get away with things on Netflix. I don't know, but he's done some absolutely awesome stuff on Smallville, and he's gotten, really crazy awesome action.
Right?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I believe he was the one that wrote the Justice episode for season 6 when they first introduced Smallville's, proto version of the Justice League. And,
yeah. He's done some awesome
40-minute episode.
Yeah, he's done some really cool stuff on Smallville and and in Spartacus. Yeah, exactly. He's definitely got the talent, and I think with Spartacus we know that he can do super crazy action sequences. He can handle a lot of characters, and I mean he knows how to do. I mean Spartacus was known for its blood, guts, and sex. So I don't know how much of that they're going to bring into Daredevil, but with the caveat of it not being on cable, they can get away with a lot more stuff. So who knows how crazy they're going to get? Is it going to be a really mature title? I don't know, but he definitely will. He'll knock that out of the park. It's not something that, I'm not a gigantic Daredevil fan. I'm a fan of comics in general, so I'm looking forward to it. But with him on it, I would say that my interest is even more piqued. As I was with when Edgar Wright was announced for Ant-Man. So it's like, with the Daredevil, I become more excited about Daredevil, and I become less excited about Ant-Man yet again. But that's my thoughts on it. Who knows where that whole Netflix Marvel universe is going to go? In fact, they're kind of, I assume that they're in some way under the purview of Disney because it's owned by Disney. But who knows what they'll be able to get away with on those Netflix shows? I really don't know. But that's all I got to say about that. Where did you want to move to next? Because we are coming up. We got about 10 minutes left on the hour, and we can wrap things up.
I did want to give a note though about Daredevil there when you were talking about tying into the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. They have said that this series leading up to Defender on Netflix, it is in fact part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, Daredevil, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and company, they're in the same universe as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and, all the Avengers. I don't see them going too mature with it. We still don't know the tone they're doing for Daredevil. Is it going to be the darker tone we've seen, especially from writers like Ed Brubaker, who had a fantastic run, as well as Brian Michael Bendis before him, making a Daredevil as dark as the Dark Knight would certainly work well. Or would they keep it in tone with the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? They could make it a little lighter and more heroic, like Mark Waid's current run on Daredevil. So even if it were lighter, you couldn't say it's a departure from the Daredevil comics because Waid's run is actually quite beloved and may have won Eisner's. I'm pretty sure he was at least nominated for the work he's done over there. Mark Waid, another guy I got to meet at Motor City Comic Con, he was pretty nice, and he said, yeah, he's also really looking forward to the Daredevil series as well. I think he might have actually been able to talk to the people that that are working on the show, but obviously he's not going to be able to divulge any secrets. But yeah, I don't think we're going to get the sex stuff that Spartacus does. I don't think Daredevil likes to hit people with batons, but I don't think he's going to be hitting anyone with a certain baton, if you know what I mean. And but yeah, and to continue in that vein, I'm gonna say it on air, Josh. You know who should replace Edgar Wright as director of Ant-Man? Just get Axel Braun. He'll do a good job. If you don't know that name, one of the most prolific superhero directors of our time, just Google Axel Braun. You may be pleasantly surprised. But going from there, we usually tend to talk about comics at this point of the show, but I was obviously mostly tapped out after Motor City Comic Con. Didn't really get to pick up much of what I wanted this week. I at least got to pick up Forever Evil #7, which was a pretty good close to that big event.
Yeah, I haven't either been able to pick up books this week, but
And if Josh hasn't read it, or people, I won't spoil it. I won't spoil the ending of Forever Evil, but it does have, I believe it's the introduction of a major villain in the New 52, someone who fans of DC past will know, and kind of hinting at we're pretty sure DC's building toward a crisis next year, so you're definitely gonna get hints of that at the end of this, but as we know, the shit's really hitting the fan over in Future's End, and then we've got Earth 2 World's End kicking off as a weekly this fall, October to be specific. And then stuff's, I believe, in the Justice League title is supposed to build too, but yeah, they're definitely leading towards something next spring at DC. But I will have a review of a graphic novel posted this Tuesday on darkknightnews.com. Not allowed to say what it is as usual in advance with graphic novels, but since it's on Dark Knight News, you can imagine it's got something to do with a Batman character. So I'll say that. But it was a good book, and review this Tuesday. Anything you want to say about comics, Josh?
No, not much. I can only say that the only book that I've had a chance to pick up in the last week was actually at Comic-Con. I picked up from David Peterson, who does Mouse Guard. I picked up his second book, which is Legends. It's basically, that's not the entire title, but it's essentially it's a free for all of multiple writers who are kind of their take on his characters from Mouse Guard. It's the second book of its kind, and he was a really nice guy, as he always is. If you ever get a chance to meet David Peterson at Comic-Con, he goes all over the country. His Mouse Guard series is Eisner winning for several things, including, I think, favorite children's series, which I think it's more like light fantasy. I mean, it's if you like the type of fantasy that you would have read in The Hobbit, minus dragons and stuff. Insert, gigantic woodland creatures for dragons, and that's what you have in Mouse Guard. It's an enjoyable book, but I picked that up, so I've been reading that. I'm very excited about Soul's Letter 44. He did say that it's coming out in trade soon. He explained a little bit more about it to me. Obviously, Eric wrote an interview he did with Charles Soule a while back, and that definitely whetted my appetite for that book. And then when he mentioned that it was sold to the Sci-Fi Network and it's going to become a show, I definitely became even more interested because I'd love to read the comic book before the show comes out. Very cool series. Read about it on whatever, Wikipedia or some bleeding cool comic book website, and you'll definitely be very interested by the premise if you like sci-fi and if you like comic books. It's definitely a win-win. So I'm going to check that out as soon as possible. I haven't picked up number 7 for Forever Evil, but I'm hoping to pick that up as soon as I can. Had to do some maintenance on the car, so my funds have also been drained after that and Comic-Con. So I'm looking to probably get books maybe next Wednesday, maybe next Friday. I'm not sure. So that's it. We are at about 2-3 minutes left. Anything else you want to touch on? Maybe.
Yeah, I'll start to close it out here to say about Charles Soule's Letter 44. I looked it up on Amazon the other day, and I believe the first trade is out in July. So, yeah, head over to Amazon if you want to possibly pre-order Letter 44. But, he's a great writer. I can attest to that from other things he writes. But, yeah, just that's going to be one you're going to want to pick up and definitely get ready for the show, because when I first heard it, I thought it worked perfectly as a TV show, and apparently Sci-Fi has high hopes for it. I also bought the latest issue of Superman Wonder Woman directly from the tie into the current Doomed event in the Superman books, and that was some great stuff. And of course, spectacular artwork as usual from Tony Daniel. He really needs to come to a Detroit convention. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention. Don't know how this slipped my mind. Art Baltazar, you probably know his name from working on all ages titles. He's done things for DC like Tiny Titans, which I believe might have actually been Eisner winning as best all ages or children's title. He's also worked on, I believe, Young Justice and Green Lantern the animated series comic adaptations, Superman Family Adventures. But if you meet this guy at a convention, he charges for a sketch. I mean, if you don't have much money to throw around at a con and you just want to buy some artwork directly from a guy, yeah, $1 American. He drew a picture of, a cutesy version of Darkseid for me because I figured I was like, you did a Superman title. Darkseid's one of my favorite villains. I'd like a picture of Darkseid. So, yeah, it's cool. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today. We will hopefully be back not too long from now, hopefully a week at the earliest, but hopefully Josh gets to see X-Men Days of Future Past. I was telling him how great that film was earlier in the day. Hopefully we review that in our next episode and also touch on whatever big comic book and movie developments happen before then. It'd be nice if we get some other significant news to talk about. But in the meantime, check us out, like us on Facebook at facebook.com/a podcast for all seasons. That's going to do it for me this week. Thanks again for listening, and I'll let you say your goodbyes, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for wrapping it up. Thanks for coming out for everyone who listens. We always appreciate spending a little bit of time just learning about some cool comic book news and whatnot. We're going to try and, like Eric said, bring things to you as often as we think that there's important, good news to talk about. I'm most likely going to see Days of Future Past Monday, maybe Monday evening for Memorial Day, and then we can have a review on that Thursday at the latest. So wrapping up, thanks for joining us again, and we'll see you next time. Have a good time, guys.